Excellent. That was so much fun to watch.
Were you guys watching from upstairs?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of an incredible experience, actually.
I'm
Bird's eye view on artistic creation.
Interesting. Probably my butt was in the camera most of the time.
So how are you feeling?
A little winded.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. It's really hard for me to not finish in one session.
Okay.
Just because I get obsessed with what I'm doing, and I have kind of like a mind's eye. I think halfway through creating the chaos part of the piece, I have a mind's eye of what it should look like.
Okay. So you don't. So it sounds like during this particular process, you developed sort of a mind's eye vision of what you're doing halfway through working with material.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll go on the canvas and I'll just kind of create. I mean, I'll have an idea of the colors I want to use as a basis, because colors are like emotive. So like, what kind of emotion am I trying to convey? And so I'll go and just create chaos in certain directions, and that is like subconsciously educated by my past experience with working, so I can't really quite describe how that part goes. But kind of halfway through creating the chaos, I'll see something within the piece that, like the potential of what it could be, and there's so many potentials of what the piece could be. There's so many different like snippets of where it could end up, and so I kind of pick one, and most of the time it's just like a feeling. I don't necessarily see like a concrete image of what it's going to look like, and then I'll kind of control it from that point on. That's why it's kind of controlled chaos, because the first step is the chaos and the second step is the control, and then it's kind of like mixing the two so that it doesn't look too controlled at the same time. So the reason why I had to finish, or feel like I had to finish a painting in one session, is because I get obsessed with this image of what it ultimately could be, and when it's not there, I just feel like I haven't accomplished anything in the painting.
Wow. So you really are more emotively based than visually based.
Yeah, I think as an abstract painter you have to be.
Okay.
Because I started off doing realism, and there was kind of a concrete image of what I wanted it to be, and I was like, great, from A to B it's really easy. I think what makes abstract painting such an adventure is the fact that there is no B, no set B, but there is a set A, which is a blank canvas. And the transitions that you have to go through to get to B, and to even describe what B is something that you kind of just have to come up with yourself. And so what makes a successful abstract painting is so much more challenging, I think, because there's no basis for it at all.
Do you feel like you change as a person as you paint?
I mean, I kind of see like painting as almost like a metaphor for life, right? Really, because here you start off with point A, you're a blank canvas, you're born, and then B, you don't know where you want to go. And I feel like that's just my life too. I'm like, I have no idea where point B is, but I just go through the motions and navigate it, with the moment that is in front of me, that is presented in front of me. Just like there's a moment, there's probably like, infinite amount of moments when you're going through a painting, where this piece looks like completely different, like 5 minutes ago, and then 3 minutes later, that's kind of how life goes.
Sure.
It's based on the decisions that you made. So painting really is a series of decisions, just like life. So in that way, I guess I am growing with each painting, but in a completely like sheltered way, because it's not really events in life happening to me,
It's less interactive and more internal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more of like looking inward and then kind of trying to bring it out.
Well, you and I spoke previously a little bit about the role of vulnerability in your life and in your work. Is that something that you draw upon every single time, like today, or it only comes up sometimes?
Well, I mean, being filmed painting, I think is the very vulnerable, because I'm like, well, I don't know if this is gonna be like a fuck up. Like, I don't know if I necessarily gonna like what I made. And I mean, a lot of the paintings that I've made, I'm like, I hate this, and then I'll step away from it for a second, and then I'll come back and make the necessary modifications. I don't necessarily love this, but I can see that it has a lot of potential. So the potential part, I think, is what I'm happy with. But it's also the first time I worked with a diptych kind of like of this size.
Okay.
So I'm used to just kind of like doing one at a time.
Okay.
As you see the ones on the wall. Those are all like me just focusing on one thing. But I like working big just because I feel like it sucks me in more to the moment. And there's also like a physicality involved with it. You know, like I'm like running around the piece. I'm like having to juggle spray can here and then like a spatula here.
It's a performance.
It definitely is, and that's why I thought it was appropriate for like, you know, the taping that we had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the other pieces don't involve a lot of movement, but this is purely extemporaneous. Like I had nothing planned for this, so I think where it's going is exciting.
Were you influenced at all? This is kind of backtracking a tiny bit. Were you influenced at all when you first started painting by your mom, who's also an artist?
I mean, I never really picked up a brush until probably I was in like 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
I always saw my mom do it, but I didn't really have like necessarily an internal desire to be like picking up a paintbrush and you know, drawing. I think what I was involved more with and what I thought was more interesting was like seeing art online that had other people had created and being like, or standing in front of a painting and having a moment of like, wow, and just seeing all the different layers and all the like how they made the painting. Just I love the moment that a painting can give somebody, kind of like a moment of awe, and I wanted it to create that moment with you know, my own paintings eventually. I actually started off painting T-shirts because I wanted, when I was younger, I was like, I need to make money. And I noticed I painted a T-shirt for one of my ex-boyfriends, and his name was Wesley, and so I drew a mosquito, and then below it it says West Nile, like the West Nile virus. Because he was like in a rocker band.
Got it.
And I thought like band shirts were really, really cool, and I was like, but they're so expensive. I don't understand why. I could just make my own. And so I drew this mosquito like all grungy with like West Nile, and he like absolutely loved it. And then when other people started seeing it around school, they were giving me requests.
Right.
And soon I had like 100, 200 people like asking me for requests because I would you know, turn these out pretty quickly, and I enjoyed doing it, but I just felt like it was really tedious because it was like realistic. Most of the time it was realism, or like pictures of something.
And so when you say tedious, you mean sort of less expressive?
It was definitely less expressive because other people were, you know, telling me what to do. And so now, I mean, in the same sense, I do accept commission pieces quite a lot, but I get more of a direction on what I want to do. And also being able to work big instead of like, you know, in the small little space definitely suits my personality more, just because I'm like,
you're a very expansive person.
Yeah, it's like crazy. I love being active, and you know, I think that's a very, very key part of being an artist, is you have to also be physically and mentally well, because your creative energy comes from your body, your stomach even.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah. And
I was just going to say, to clarify, when you mean well, you're sort of talking about having a social and emotional environment where you can ground yourself, if I understand correctly.
What do you mean by well?
Well, I'm aware that some people, when they say well, they're talking about more like in distinction to somebody who has like a mental illness, for example, but I don't think that's what you're talking about. I think you're talking more about sort of being in an environment where you can ground yourself enough to express.
Yeah, I think that's very important, is the atmosphere that you provide yourself and the people that you surround yourself with. But I don't necessarily think I I don't necessarily think that it's all based on of that. I don't, because I feel like I can even be in isolation and still make work based on the action that I'm creating, making a mark. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I'm actually creating my own material when I paint, because when I lay like a splatter or whatever it is, a mark on a piece of canvas, it looks like something. And I think your mind is like trained to always identify an abstract mark with something that you see as an object in the real world. And there's just this like subconscious continuation, almost like reflexive, that happens when you continue the stroke. And so I think in that way you don't necessarily even have to be like, I think you can actually be in isolation. And there have been cases of like a lot of like outside, what they call outsider art, a lot of artists who like isolate themselves in the desert and just like paint for years and years. Because I don't think necessarily painting has to be informed by your experiences, because everything is visual. So even if you are isolated, you're still experiencing like visual input, visual like stimuli.
Sure.
So, but I know that, you know, a lot of the conceptual art, I think that is necessary to be able to come up with, you know, concepts related to like anything political, theoretical. These are things I think you have to be involved in like a bigger community to be able to come up.
Sure. So it kind of depends. Yeah, it depends what you're painting about. Yeah, I gotcha. Well, and I do want to ask you a little bit. We talked previously about how it is to navigate the world of art as a young woman, and just sort of how the gender dynamics play out, and power dynamics, and sort of the responses that you get from, you know, your fans in the general art world and things like that. How's that for you?
It's tough. I would say it's tougher. People say, oh, it's easy because it's like, oh, you're pretty and you can network better. But I think a lot of times, because you're a female, you're attractive, you're in the art world, especially in Los Angeles too. And I'm sure like a lot of other models in the industry have been like, oh, you have to kind of like just, you know, schmooze the right people. And I'm not about that at all. I think that's like repulsive to do that, to be able to have to do that in order to get to where you need to be. I mean, I'm just a believer. I'm a believer definitely in networking and like, you know, having the right people around you, the right influences. Like Matt, for example, being so generous to let us use his house. You know, finding people like that who are really, really genuinely supportive with like no ulterior motives. I think that's really difficult to find, just because you don't know if somebody's interested in your art or if they're interested in just you. Right. Obviously, you want people to be interested in you and your art. Sure. Because like you can't have one without the other. But I definitely get the wrong, definitely the wrong the wrong crowd attracting.
So how do you navigate that when it happens?
You kind of just have to filter out and use your. I've been around so many people now, and I think I'm a really good judge of character. So I can identify that pretty quickly. But somebody who isn't as good and who's new to maybe LA, who aren't as good a judge of character, I think that could be definitely like a slippery slope into the wrong direction. So I think just keeping your head grounded and then knowing who your real supporters are, I think that's a big part of it. And also, you know, marketing in the right ways, where you're not like, you know, advertising something else other than your work. Yeah.
So for you, what kind of an aesthetic do you like to cultivate in terms of your brand or your persona?
I like to be kind of like, I hate just being a one multidimensional figure. I like thinking of myself as somebody who kind of can do a lot of things. Like I'm active. I love going to the gym. I like being fit. I also love to paint. I was a pre-med at UCLA. Right. You know, I've done like all these random things, and I think just portraying myself as like a multidimensional person. Like I love fashion. I love who doesn't love looking good? You know, like, I love, you know, I love beauty just as much as I love art. I think beauty is art. So I think just being an all-around, like, well-rounded artist and person who can express that onto a canvas in like a lively manner. That's kind of what I want to be.
Nice.
And that's who I am.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you've achieved that actually, which is exciting. Let's revisit the vulnerability topic a little bit more, because it's been such a sort of fruitful thing for us to speak about. You just had so much insight for me into how sometimes you want to kind of turn that part of yourself off periodically because of whether it's LA or whether it's the art world or whether it's, I don't know, just the world can be a crazy place sometimes. But that's really been a powerful thing to develop, and kind of figuring out how to be vulnerable without being kind of overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think it's just a natural inclination, human nature, to just feel like you want to close yourself off and just be in your own lane when there's so many people. You know, when you come across so many different types of people, you're out or whatever, you meet like 5 people a day in LA.
Right.
So I think in any big city.
Yeah.
And I think also the fact that there's so many different like personas, you know, with the Hollywood thing going on that people present to you that's not necessarily, you know, authentic. So, and then you kind of get sucked into that too. Like, if they're not authentic, why should I be authentic? I'm just, you know, putting myself out there without getting anything back.
Right.
So when I'm approaching painting, I think that's a good example of me transferring like you know, individual experience into canvas. Because there are definitely moments where I'm just like restrained because I'm quite uncertain with how the specific action, like the specific mark that I'm gonna make, how it's gonna be received. Because I keep thinking about, what do you think somebody will like this? And I think that's the problem with me with commissions. Is like I'm always thinking like, is that person gonna like it?
Sure.
I think a lot of artists go through that. Thinking about, you know, if this mark that I'm making, is it gonna transfer well? So there's definitely, I think what's interesting about painting is you can look at a piece and see if that artist was restrained or not. If there's like a moment in the piece where, you know, the artist is holding back something. I think I can pinpoint to certain pieces here, like this one's like the second to last one.
To our left.
Sorry, that one to your right. I don't even know
how
to like say it. Yeah,
got it.
The one. That one.
Okay.
Versus like the blue one at the end of the wall. The blue one at the end of the wall was just like total, just like I didn't really care. Like let's just throw it on.
Okay.
But it was calculated in a sense because, you know, the colors and the scheme and all of the underpainting that you can't really quite see. It was kind of like total unrestrained. Whereas the second one, there's a little bit more control imposed because there's a pattern, you know, there's a pattern that's received within it. When I actually had finished that one, stepped away from it, waiting for it to dry, I actually didn't like it. So now, like, seeing it kind of like all settle in form and the multi-layer that it is, I appreciate it. But with any great painting, there has to be tension between two forces. So I think the tension between, you know, what I emote, like with control and chaos, and I think that goes hand in hand with vulnerability, just because the control part of myself is like the shy, the restrained, the unsure of myself kind of emotion, whereas the chaos is just like, I'm just gonna let everything go and put it there, all out there on the canvas. So having kind of like a fine line between the two is what I think, that's me as a person. It just explains me as a person. I think I'm always like in between two places, like really not sure of myself or like utterly sure of myself, and then also kind of being in the in-between spaces and not being just you know, I think that's just what a lot of people go through. It's just
Right.
like this emotional roller coaster, and
Yeah.
especially maybe being overly more emotional than other people. I think about that a lot. But I think it's very important that other people know that being vulnerable is okay, because that's when you're most in tune with yourself. You're most in tune with your emotions, and you're being authentic to other people. Real conversations and real connection can't happen without vulnerability.
Well, you know, that's super fourth wave. We were talking about that on the way over here, actually. Yeah. I love that. So it sounds like you sort of exist in this dialectic with your painting process, where on the one hand you grow as a person by painting, and then on the other hand, of course, your painting grows as you grow.
Yeah.
Because you're making it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm by no means like an expert artist or whatever established. I think I'm just a person who likes to explore myself through painting and likes to create that moment for people of like, well, I really appreciate that. Because I think you come closer to self-actualization, right? At the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Psychology class.
Yeah.
You come closer to self-actualization when you can create something with your bare hands and your brain. You know, and I think a lot of people aren't in touch with that quite yet. You know, they work a 9 to 5, but you know, what are you actually creating? What are you expressing and putting out to the world?
Yeah.
And I think it should be a message that you reverberate with internally,
So
whatever that is.
Particularly interesting question within a consumerist culture, you know.
Yeah.
Not that, we have to consume things, right? We have to consume food and water and sunshine and air and things like that, but yeah, what are you producing also? What are you creating? What are you generating? And yeah, how do you kind of walk that fine line between needing to consume to some degree and then sort of offering something back out into the world? I just love that, you know, you don't have training in art, which is not to put down art training, obviously, but I mean, you're pre-med, like you said, at UCLA.
Yeah.
But you haven't just sort of said, oh, this is just a silly hobby that I do. Because it's not, for one, but you don't downplay it, and I love that, you know. I think particularly as a woman, the fact that you're just like, boom, I'm an artist, you know.
Yeah.
I don't need, validation by, some particular degree or whatnot. So
Yeah, right. I think you should just do what you feel like doing. Like this has been said 1,000 times.
yeah.
You should just do what you feel like doing.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out the first time, you don't make a great painting the first time, it's fine. Just keep making. But a big part of it has to do with also self-reflection.
Sure.
You can't just make work without not really thinking about what you're actually doing. Even though I went to UCLA, I was UCLA pre-med, I still took, like a lot of art classes, like conceptual, most of them were conceptual, that's just how it goes, especially in the fine art world, and they never taught us at all.
Wow.
It was all, reflecting on a concept, come up with a concept, and then come up with a body of work. It was as hardcore as that, just think about it. Think about what?
Yeah.
What are we thinking about?
Yeah.
That's what I had a hard time with, and I still have a hard time with that, because I think you're always trying to come up with an idea or information that you don't necessarily think about on a daily basis. I think what makes art really, really exciting is that a painting is like a reflection of how somebody thinks, and so you can have each painting is like a portal to someone's brain at the moment they were creating it. And I think that's what's beautiful.
It's freaking awesome. I love that. I love that a lot. Yeah, it's so interesting. Being in the performing arts world that's full of these sort of very ethereal moments in the sense that they are performed and then they're gone. I mean, unless
Exactly.
it's, of course, there's film and things like that. It's, you know,
Yeah.
it's slightly more complex. But on the other hand, this is, you know, ostensibly sort of a permanent stamp of that moment in time.
Yeah.
It's almost, they sort of, not quite opposites, it's maybe a little bit too extreme, but a performance might take months or even years to craft.
Right.
Whereas you might do, I mean, you could do a painting in 6 months or 6
Yeah,
years or something,
yeah.
but, you know, you might create these in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
But it's a stamp of those couple of hours that sort of endures.
And there's
over
something
time.
so, I think the difference between film and paint is, I mean, this is directly analog. You know, this is like a human hand touching
Totally.
that canvas, even if it is via a brush or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's, I think that's what makes art like worth
Yeah.
millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah,
You know, like
yeah.
the ones that really do
Yeah.
come through.
Yeah, for sure. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the fourth wave viewing audience? Fellow women, fellow artists.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like what I said before. I think you should just keep doing what you love and believe in what you're doing, even if other people don't necessarily see what you're trying to do. Just stay in your lane. Stay in your lane, look forward, and just keep moving.
Love that. Thank you so much. To be continued. Thanks, guys.